coming out Sunday morning, Wanderlust. Just first a few questions for you. I'm just curious, how many people know what a CSA is? Yes. Good. How many people are a member of CSA? Really good. How many people garden? Great. And how many people want to garden? Brilliant, thanks. So, I had a funny thing happen to me the other night. A few weeks ago, I went out to dinner at a restaurant in Soho called Balabusta, and I had this really interesting waiter. He was very talkative and really was excited to share a lot of information about the source of our food. And so we got into a conversation about this mushroom dish, which sounded really amazing. He's like, well, these are really special mushrooms that you usually find them in cemeteries. And then immediately he froze and said, well, I actually usually don't tell people that, and almost scared off. I was like, that's strange. I mean, I was interested. I was like, okay, yeah, keep telling me about my food. Where is it from? It's grown in the cemetery. But anyways, I thought that was strange. So we're going to uncover that. Why do we want to know more about where our food comes from, and why culturally would that information not be something that would be appetizing for us? So this is a picture of our scallions straight from the dirt, just to get into our soil and our dirt. And most of these pictures I'm showing you are from Growing Heart Farm and from my time in the soil. And here's my medicinal herb garden. But I wasn't born a farmer. I wasn't born knowing about compost and soil. I grew up in San Diego and grew up on fast food. And this came to me later in life. I had a really funny opportunity. I was working on a video game, Leela. It's actually Deepak Chopra's Chakra video game, and the head producer was starting a farm. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go up there and change the direction of my life too. And so that's how it happened. It really just happened to me, and I wasn't born with this information. But to really talk about food, we have to talk about what food is made from. And that is the dirt, or in this case, soil, synonymous here. So what really is dirt? It's water, it's nutrients, it's minerals, it's trillions, more than you could ever imagine, of living microorganisms. And the key word here is a living substance. It's alive, it is the basic nature, the basic definition of fertility. So everything that we can imagine on this earth is from this miraculous substance that looks dead. It doesn't look like it has all this life. But this is the magical substance that, trust me, I have a good reason why I'm going to talk all about dirt and compost at a yoga conference, so at a yoga festival. So it's all going to tie in, but we're going to go really deep into what this stuff is and what the meaning of it. And culturally, every single culture has a story of where our essence is born, where we come from is from the dirt, is from the earth. And that's something that's relevant throughout all these cultures, that there's been a little bit of a disconnection in our kind of modern life. And I really want to ask, why is that? And how can we heal that disconnection from where we come from the dirt? And I'm not going to spend too much time in what's happening currently in the degradation of the soil, but we all know that there's bad farming practices all over that are using pesticides and chemical fertilizers, and the mining practices, and just the general poor waste management, and all the things and substances that we're putting into our soil, and also all the cities that we're just covering up this living substance that wants to live and breathe and take in water with concrete and blocking it out from its life's purpose. So this might be a sign that you are familiar with here at Wanderlust. We have these options when we have our disposal process, you have your recycling, your trash, and then compost, which I'm so thrilled that Wanderlust here has really taken on the composting challenge. All the vendors are using compostables. But what really is compost? You know, it's colloquial now that it's more in our mainstream dialogue, but what really is this alchemical practice of composting? So I use the word alchemical as sometimes compost is referred to as black gold. Has anyone ever heard that before? Yeah, it's this precious gold substance. And, you know, in alchemy, they were trying to take any stone or, you know, in the physical practice of alchemy, there was both an inward psychological practice and the physical of turning substances into gold. And so the composting process is this regenerative closed loop cycle. It's the cycle that Earth, the perfect cycle that Earth has given us, that anything that comes from the earth goes back to the earth, and anything that comes from the earth goes back to the earth. And every time we eat, and every time we garden, every time we have this interaction, it's this remembering of this closed loop system from where we came, round and round. Here we go. So, compost. What do you put in your compost bin? You put in food scraps, you put in garden waste. Sometimes we put in compostable papers or, you know, different manures and things like that. And so let's really get into the nerdiness of this. Another title I was going to call this talk was my love affair with dirt. So I really like dirt a lot. I can't even express to you how much I like it. So compost, you have sometimes what you call your greens and your browns. And the greens are, it's like baking, it's like an oven. It's like we're baking a cake, we're baking this living substance. The greens are your fire element. It's the heat, it's the rot that we're gonna get to a little bit later. And the browns is the fuel, the carbon. And so it's this layering process of the heat element and then the fuel that is literally burning and transforming, again, back to alchemy, this alchemical fire. The fire in alchemy was so important. That was the changing agent. So through this fire, this burning, we're recreating life. And so why compost is so important is that it's like extra alive dirt. So we have our regular dirt that's alive and already magical and doing all its thing. And then compost is like super dirt that's uber alive. And so from this stage, then that, like I said, it goes through this turning process. So we're moving the dirt. After one turning, maybe you still have ammoniums in there. After another turning, you know, it's slowly getting more and more refined, just like our yoga practices and just like all the sun salutations we do, mixing it up, getting all the blood and circulation moving. So it comes into this more refined process, this uber dirt, the compost, and then it turns into food because it's nurturing our plants. And this is a lovely picture from one of our chefs, Hannah Gruber, from one of our farm to yoga dinners. And then it turns into us, people, because we eat the food. Compost, into refined soil, into plants, birds and bees doing their thing. This is a cucumber plant from the garden. And back into food, back into us. So it's this cycle. It sounds so simple, but how can we bring this remembering of this cycle back into our lives? Keyword, regenerative. Regenerative. I really like this quotation. Nothing is waste until something is wasted. So what I love about talking to yogis and as a yoga teacher is we can get really deep. We can dive all the way into this stuff. Not just talking about the sciencey, nerdy stuff. We can talk about the spiritual aspect of this. And so why bring up the word guru? So the why we even are here today practicing yoga is because all these teachers, all these gurus have passed this information down to us. But how many people know the meaning of this word, guru? Okay. All right. So gu actually means darkness. Ru means light. So it is the guru that transforms the darkness into light, that goes into the dark to find the light. Just like compost. Just like compost. The guru, dirt is really our ultimate guru, is the example of how we turn from dark into light, how we build fertility in the darkness. And just how many people practice restorative yoga? That's my specialty, teaching. And obviously I've been put on this planet to really talk about the dark and the yin, because restorative yoga is all about doing it in the dark, in the quiet, the turning, the internal turning of our lives, the spiritual composting, as you can say. So in Taoism or in Chinese medicine, the whole actually foundation of Chinese medicine is built on the yin and the yang, which again, colloquially we have an understanding of it. But really, when you look at this symbol, it's fascinating what it's trying to tell us. That as soon as you have the rise of yang, just like we're at celebrating the solstice right now, as soon as you have the longest day of the year, that height of yang, at the height of yang, it turns into yin. Then it now will start having shorter and shorter days of the year. And as soon as you have the shortest day of the year, then you're going to start having the longest day of the year. And literally, yin and yang, they refer to a mountainside. How perfect, we're on a mountain today. Yang means the sunny side of the mountain, and yin means the shady side. So it's this understanding and this knowing that for every sunny side, there's a shady side. There's always the shadow. There's always the light in the dark. And it's the balance of these two elements in the turning, like the compost, the turning of this, that is creating everything that we know and everything we are on this planet. So again, just this lovely food that nourishes us. And it comes from the earth. And again, Chinese medicine has this beautiful system of taking all the elements apart and giving them their roles. So the earth element in Chinese medicine is responsible for the rotting and the ripening. Rotting and ripening. Well, culturally, we're all on board with the ripening. We love what is hip and young and fresh and tasty and smells good, and just the new, the better, the new, the better, than, this ripe, the constant ripening. But my question for you, what about the rotting? It's not always that fun to talk about, but actually it is. When that waiter was telling me about these mushrooms that came from the cemetery, I was like, that's awesome. Yes, it can be, the compost is icky and smelly and dark and scary, but to talk about yin, you have to talk about yang. You can't, they're inseparable. To talk about the ripening and all this lovely food and all this nurturing and all this light, you have to talk about the rotting. So in India, actually, how many people we know about the holy cow in India, right? The cow is sacred. So one of the many reasons why the cow is sacred is actually for cow dung. If you step in cow dung in India, it's actually a good luck symbol. It's not like, oh man, I just stepped in some shit. It's actually, how blessed am I that I am in an environment that I stepped in the fertility of life. I stepped in this substance that creates everything else. What a mind flip of that. That, culturally, we don't live like that. We are pretty far removed from that. So, this came from dirt, from compost, from the turning of the shit. So, I am blessed I get to give farm tours all season long, Growing Heart Farm at our Farm to Yoga events. And I'll never forget one of the first farm tours that I gave. It was to some friends, all from the city, and again, I'm a city dweller too. I wasn't born on a farm. And I was animating the plants. It was my first season, so I was so excited to share all this information that I had gathered. And I distinctly remember this one moment that I pulled a carrot from the ground. Ah! Literally, my friend Dan was just like, his mouth dropped. He just looked at me, he's like, food comes from the ground. And it was like anyone could say that, you know, like little kids can say that, we can all say that, but it was this remembering, this deep knowing, this connecting to our essence of who we are, back to the dirt, back to the soil, back to the rot, that food comes from the ground. So my request for us today is to take this remembering home. How do we live in our lives, in all the zones and aspects of our lives, closer to both cycles, the yin and the yang, the rotting and the ripening? I really believe that it's this willingness to look into the darkness, the willingness to transform that underneath side, the shadow side, that can actually heal many of the destructive issues that we're facing on this planet. And it's we're already attuned to this as yogis, this shift of our consciousness, this willingness to be mindful, this willingness to invite this transformation into our bodies. So we're good at yoga, we're good at getting on our mats, we're good at gathering together. So really, what is the next step? What is our next frontier as yogis to bring this practice into how we care for our food system, how we care for our gardens and our farmers and each other? So like I said, one of the things I love doing is bringing all people, but especially yogis, to the farm and talking about the different varieties of food and having that connection, getting our hands into the dirt. And a lot of times in these environmental discussions, the talk comes more about how can you do less bad? You know, it's like, how can you make less of a footprint? So my request to you is, instead of doing less bad, actually, how can you do more good? How can you leave a handprint? Planting a garden is leaving a handprint. Tending that garden is leaving a handprint, encouraging this regenerative cycle. And a beautiful story, actually, that Wanderlust has given, I think they are doing more than selling Lululemon pants, is that last year, that lawn that everyone's hanging out in Vermont is, it used to be covered with concrete. And last year at the end of the festival, I was talking to one of the organizers, and he said, well, yeah, they actually convinced Stratton to pull up the concrete and let it be a lawn and expose that soil. That's one of the first steps, getting the infiltration of water into that soil. So I was really impressed that even Wanderlust here is leaving this handprint on Stratton. Even a little bit of chiseling away that concrete. So just a funny story is, little did I know that I was going to be speaking on compost and black gold, but last year there were these two poets who typed haikus on their typewriters out on that lawn, that very same lawn. And so I wrote this haiku last year at Wanderlust. In search of black gold, magically weaving through time, peaceful, side by side. So I really hope that you can bring this knowledge of dirt and soil and compost into your life, whether it's this knowing that brings you to join a CSA or support community gardens or support schoolyard gardens or get involved in the citywide initiatives for composting, or ask your farmers, do they use compost, or are they using fertilizer? Support farms that use compost. So there's many different ways and aspects to get involved, and I just hope that you now can bring this message home and into your lives. Thank you.